Hey everyone, what's going on? It's Am I Missing Something? It's Matt.
And it's Zach.
This is our discussion platform, if you will. We kind of talk about all things music, and if there's anything in particular that we may or may not be missing, we discuss it on here. And there was a topic that came up recently because in the news, there seemed to be a little bit of buzz about a 90s band that you might call the first Nickelback.
Ooh, by the name of, come in hot.
Yeah, hot takes. I mean, they got the same type of hate that Nickelback got, but they did it first. Anyway, so you're wondering who the hell am I talking about? I'm talking about Creed. And Creed, there was some buzz that they were going to get back together. And then, of course, the band members did like the whole hush-hush thing. No, we're not getting back together. You know, maybe someday. There's got to be some talks, some discussion. And then all of a sudden, boom, on July 19th, Creed has now come back officially with the summer of 99, not tour, but cruise.
I mean, not to, jump in too fast, but the week prior, they were teasing, stay tuned. Are you ready? Get ready. And everyone's like, oh boy, they're confirming it.
Are you going to take
the point
me home?
that, yeah, are you going to, oh my God, do I need to get ready to accept the Creed reunion with arms wide open? Like, insert your own pun, like, just go crazy. To the point that, like, all right, so they're basically prepping us for a reunion tour or maybe the festival run. That alone was already making us scratch our heads, which we'll get into in a little bit more. And then out of nowhere, they announced, the day that they promised an announcement, cruise with Creed, 3 Doors Down, Buck Cherry, Tonic, Tantric, Fuel. Like, I'm just like, wait, no, well, no, oh God. Without showing too much of my opinions. What? Needless to say, the announcement of the summer of 99 cruise alone, that alone is a lot to unravel. But even going back to Matt's point, here comes Creed again, one of, as Matt mentioned, the not so much beloved bands of the 90s or 2000s, or let's face it, of rock. And what makes it even more complexing is that, we got the rest of the band, minus Scott Stapp, in a little band called Alter Bridge, who have really gained a strong following over the years and have become actually really liked and just critically acclaimed and just a damn good band, to the point that you kind of forgot. Oh yeah, Mark Tremonti, phenomenal guitar player, and he just so happened to be in Creed 2. Hence the title of this episode, Creed Reunion. Am I missing something? Matt, tell me, am I missing something?
Well, I think you are to a certain extent, and I'll tell you why.
Please do.
Because it's a cruise. And I think that is the key point, because it's not a full tour. It's 4 days on a boat that was already going out to sea. And I think that this is, no pun intended, testing the waters if there's going to be a market for Creed to come back. I mean, it writes itself.
It really does. But and I will say this, you're absolutely right in that. Well, first off, I'm sure there will be more than just this cruise. In fact, the way that the color, like when they were doing the teasing, the colors and of the logos and everything, I actually was kind of thinking, oh, I bet you they're going to be announcing that they're the headliners of next year's Sick New World, which, if you recall, this year it was basically the When We Were Young festival, but for new metal. And I was like, oh, you know what? That kind of makes sense for Creed to headline that. And I bet that would be the way they test waters to see if there's really any interest. But yeah, I agree with you that this is definitely more of a temperature check. But and again, I'm sorry if I'm going to come off really critical here, but couldn't you have spared the money of having to put on a festival on a cruise nonetheless to basically kind of tell, I mean, is there really that much demand to even justify testing the waters?
Well, it's Creed. It's a name. It's a name, right? And I think that, with some of this, a lot of these bands, they probably also wanted to do some sort of touring this summer, and they couldn't really latch on to anything because maybe the tides are turning with, new bands that are coming up, and maybe we're in this discovery phase of new music, and there's not a lot of, oomph and push around a lot of 90s nostalgia acts to jump on a tour together, because I don't know. I don't know what the numbers looked like last time they did something like that. But, there's no other major 90s bands that are going on tour this summer, from my understanding. So
I mean,
this
Stained and Godsmack and
they're on their own thing. Stained is coming back with a new album. None of these guys have new albums really coming out, and I mean, I wouldn't really consider
Godsmack they're coming out their quote unquote final album before they just
right. This was their final album,
yeah.
But Stained is coming out with their new one, and I forget what it's called. But there's no other real like 90s nostalgia or 90s like tours. Like there's some other tours in the past that were just specifically, I know, like Vertical Horizon, Fuel, and a couple of these other bands, they would jump on that in a heartbeat.
Who you will catch on this cruise, by the way.
Right. The official full lineup, because Zach didn't go through the whole thing. No, the official full lineup, it's Creed, Three Doors Down, Buck Cherry, Tonic, because you wanted more, Vertical Horizon.
Sing it, damn it.
She's everything you want. She's everything you need. That song.
Fuel. We do not own the rights to these songs at all. Sing it.
We're not going to sing anymore. Verve Pipe, Tantric, Dishwalla, Louise Post of Veruca Salt, and 9 Days. 9 Days is here's the story of a girl, cried a river and drowned the whole world.
Oh, yeah, man, they really went deep on this lineup.
So that is that's the entire lineup. Actually, okay, so here's another thing that I didn't even notice the first time I looked at this, and it's hosted by Eddie Trunk and the Power Hour, which consists of Matt Pinfield, Katie Babbs, and Josh Bernstein.
Mm-hmm. It's a show on Access TV.
Okay, so there you go. It's a lot of more 90s.
Well, it's funny because, I mean, Matt Pinfield makes sense. And by the way, love you, Matt. He's actually been very supportive of us on social media, surprisingly, and following us and liking our stuff. Out of all those names, Eddie Trunk's the one that surprises me because he's really more of an 80s guy, like an 80s hair metal guy. So I'm curious if he's going to get on the boat and realize, oh, I'm on the wrong boat.
But honestly, I think if you're going to see this on a cruise, I think it's perfect, right? Like normally you can catch the boat house band. And I think that these bands at the stage of their careers that they're at right now are a step above the house band. But they're not, really like we're going to build a tour around the material.
So then let me ask you then, Matt, do you think that this is Creed's way of basically admitting, yeah, we know we can't justify even doing like festival runs. Like we know we can't even justify doing a Pantera type reunion where we do just like just festivals and tour dates here and there. Like, because to me, it sounds like you're almost you're acknowledging what I'm kind of alluding to is that, and again, I'm sorry if you're a huge Creed fan, but is there really that much of a demand? Did anyone ask for Creed to reunite?
I don't think it matters if anybody asked if Creed reunites. I think it matters that, first off, I'm amazed that Scott Stapp and Alter Bridge, I'm going to call them that from now on, Alter Bridge, talk to each other.
I don't think they do, though. That's the other thing that makes,
they obviously had to.
Listen. Here, and this is another reason why I'm like, I'm surprised because it's not like when they reunited in 2008, 2009, or that period. If you read interviews that Mark Tremonti did, he basically confirmed, like, yeah, we really didn't talk to Scott at all during those tours when we got back together. Like, there was really no friendship. Like, so it's not like they went on hiatus in 2012 after the reunion and was like, listen, we're just busy right now. We're having fun of our other projects. It's not like they were having fun when they reunited. It's not like, I mean, maybe time has changed. Maybe Mark was like, you know what? I really do miss playing Higher live. I really do miss playing What If. I just have a hard time believing that the members of Creed are doing it for anything other than a good paycheck. I'm having a hard time believing that after all of the hate that Creed has received, and even the lackluster response that they had when they first reunited, that in 2023 and 2024 when they actually do perform, that there really is a high demand for Creed to ever be on stage again together. Especially when Alter Bridge is as success. I mean, granted, they're not as successful as Creed ever has been, but especially when Creed is on a hot. I'm sorry, when especially with Alter Bridge being on such a hot roll right now.
I think that it's a totally different thing, right? I think if they're trying to do this, they're probably doing it from the perspective of, hey, is there any juice left in the tank? Is there anything left that we need to do? Do people still care? And if they do care, great, maybe we'll make a new album. If they don't care, then they're going to be relegated to, the music halls of history with the rest of these bands, because let's face it, the only other band that is on this tour, let's leave Three Doors Down out of it, because Three Doors Down, they still have a following. They still can go out there and do like small arenas. But like the only other band on here that had the ability to do that was Buck Cherry. And even they are like another one of these bands that are just nostalgia acts at this point. I think that if it's going to come down to, does Creed do anything else? It's really going to be telling, like, does this cruise do anything? What is the feelings of Creed after this cruise? Is there any buzz being generated for Creed after this cruise? And if not, then it was just 4 days on a boat from Miami to Nassau in the Bahamas. And that's it. And if it's more than that, great, then maybe they'll do, a small run of dates next summer. But, I think for what this is, I think it's perfectly fine. And it's not really wasting anybody's time or money if, you just get a cruise out of it. If Creed sounds like garbage because Scott Stapp can't sing anymore, or, there's just a lackluster response to Creed, then that's it.
I guess it'll be also interesting and to see if this is a testament also to there being any appeal to, and I know I can already feel you cringing at what I'm about to say, but if there will be actually any nostalgic feel for post-grunge scene. I say that because I'm sure we're going to have a whole debate and argument as to even what the hell post-grunge even means. But if you look at how they're marketing this, they're clearly saying, like, for the fans who missed the post-grunge era of the 90s, I'm like, and you and I have actually even like had this discussion, like, what the hell does that even mean? What is post-grunge? And I have a few theories, but I'm curious. What makes you hate it so much?
Because essentially post-grunge is still going on now. There's no other defining quality in music other than post-grunge and emo. That's really, and you've got the ones that have always kind of stood the test of time, like punk and metal and thrash and things like that. Those things have never changed. But we're talking about the general population of music. It doesn't really fall into those categories. And post-grunge is kind of just tacked onto them. Like the 3 Days Graces and the Breaking Benjamins and, bands that kind of fall in line with that. Like Buck Cherry is technically post-grunge. And I think Stained is even lumped in with post-grunge. And you could just see where this is going, right? Like a band like Breaking Benjamin and 3 Days Grace are completely different than a band like Stained. And for them to both kind of just be lumped into, oh, this is all post-grunge. When does post-grunge stop?
I would say, because, yeah, there's definitely a lot of bands. I mean, technically, even Foo Fighters, I think, sometimes get lumped into post-grunge.
Yeah.
I think there's definitely there's some bands who just get thrown into it because you came out after 1995 and you're rock. But I do also would argue that a good, I think actually the lineup for the Summer of '99 cruise is a great example of this. Is one thing a lot of like quote unquote true post grunge or but rock bands have in common is that they try to sound like Pearl Jam, but want to party like Led Zeppelin. And I think that you can almost argue that is Creed to a T. Throw in a little bit of Christian testosterone in there too. Again, kind of circling back, full circle. Terrible pun of a mediocre reunion album. Back to Creed. I know that there's definitely some fans who are like diehard and really did love Creed, but I feel like even there's some bands who got really trashed on in the late 90s, early 2000s who at least kind of came back, had a little bit of nostalgia, and even some fans were like, I like them as a joke. I feel like the hate always overrode the nostalgia of Creed. And I think part of it is because you could argue that Creed are the original Greta Van Fleet in that, a huge criticism that fans and critics had of them was they tried so hard to sound like Pearl Jam and even Stone Temple Pilots, to the point that I don't know if Stone Temple Pilots should have sued them for ripping a good chunk of their sound, or if they should have thanked them because they took the distraction off of Pearl Jam sounded like off away from them.
I completely disagree with that. I think that Creed kind of, while you say Pearl Jam, like Pearl Jam was great, Pearl Jam still is great, but I think that Creed kind of had their own thing going on. I don't think that they tried to sound so Pearl Jammy-ish. I never really, the only place that you might get that, at least in my opinion, is going to be on their first album. And on, Human Clay, I think that was a completely different sound. Like you can almost listen to those and think that they're two different bands because there's not the same type of feel in either one of those albums. You can definitely hear the mainstream production and the mainstream like push that they get in Human Clay that they didn't get on My Own Prison. I think that My Own Prison is that album that can be compared to Pearl Jam. I don't think Human Clay can. And whether
I disagree completely. I mean, whatever, because that was just a mediocre album, but I actually revisited Human Clay just into anticipation of this discussion. And the second I listened to Are You Ready, Beautiful, and even Higher, I was like, oh, wow, they really, okay. They're just trying to take like a good, like very, very well produced sound with a little bit of like, more guitar distortion. And that this could have been, I can see the Pearl Jam connection. Like I actually was like more taken aback by like how much they did try to sound like Pearl Jam on this album. Like, cause I always thought like, oh, that's not that, much of a comparison. And I revisited, I'm like, no, Are You Ready? That totally sounds like a late 90s hard rock band trying to sound like Pearl Jam. To me, it's almost like, all right, these are musicians who only listened to the Black Album for 5 years and then suddenly discovered Pearl Jam and went, we should sound like that.
I think on My Own Prison, they definitely did try to do the Pearl Jam thing. Human Clay, once again, I disagree. I think that is the epitome of what post-grunge was.
I agree with that part.
And I think that's really it, right? Like they tried to bring in all the angst from grunge and they tried to be the next Nirvana, but it wasn't ever going to work for Creed to be the next anything except for Creed. Because let's face it, Scott Stapp was never badass enough to be Kurt Cobain or Eddie Vedder.
I mean, I could hear a little more Alice in Chains than Nirvana, but I don't hear Nirvana. Like, I was taken aback by how much
they tried, not that they were successful.
I was taken aback by how accurate the Pearl Jam comparisons were when I revisited Human Clay recently. But with that said, in your opinion then, Matt, what did cause so much hate for Creed? Why did they get... Go ahead.
2 words. Scott Stapp.
So you think
that's it?
You think it's the Fred Durst effect?
Yes, 100%. This was the guy who was supposed to be all like squeaky clean Christian man, and then all of a sudden they found him, I think, with drugs and like treating his wife bad, like beating his wife or something. I forget exactly what he did, but it's like, I'm gonna be this, say I'm this, and then all of a sudden 180 the other way. And yeah, that's what caused the hate. That, and I think when Higher broke, they shoved Creed down everybody's throats like they did with Nickelback. And that's where I think the comparison comes in, because if you look at what they did with everything that was popular around the late 90s and early mid 2000s, when it became big, you heard it every 30 to 45 minutes on the radio consistently. And it just happened and happened and happened. Then it was all over TRL and it was all over MTV when those were things. And then, you bought the CD and you wore the CD out, and there was no escaping it. And if you did not hear Creed or hear Higher, you didn't listen to music in any capacity.
I mean, I think even going back to even before, because I think you hit the nail on the head in that they were so overplayed. And just, I think Stapp just embodied, even like before it became clear, like, he, definitely had kind of strayed from his Christianity, or was, definitely kind of living a little bit of a rock star lifestyle that seemed hypocritical to what he initially said he was. I still remember the battle between Fred Durst and Scott Stapp, and like how like they both called each other out on stage when they shared a festival together, and just kind of led to like a battle of the words in the press. And Scott saying, "Come fight me, bro, fight me. I'll do a charity boxing fight. Let's do it." And just like, of course, these two would be fighting in the press. Of course, because as different as they are so similar in that, of course, they're seeking out media attention. Like, it just became like nauseating to just see him and to hear him. And I think it's a mixture of overplayed. It didn't help.
Correct. There's no denying that there was a palpable hatred for Scott Stapp. And to some extent, I think it still exists.
Oh, absolutely. And listen, I know he's gone through a lot of his own personal stuff. He's been very vocal just about his health and his addiction. I hope for the best. I hope that he uses this opportunity for reunion to prove a lot of critics wrong. But it still leads me to wonder, are people really that interested in seeing Creed live again after so many years of hate, and maybe even more powerful, so many years of not caring? Because it's not like you watch a random TV show and they'll play a song from Creed. Like, we went from them being so overplayed that it was nauseating to almost like I haven't even heard that song in how many years. It's not like with Blink-182 where they are still relevant even when they're inactive, if that makes sense. Like, it's just, where has that nostalgic interest been to justify this return?
I think somebody had the great idea to bring together 90s bands, and they needed one big name. And what bigger of a name to get for the 90s that you could possibly get, right? So, like, let's just say, for all intents and purposes, the Stone Temple Pilots are finished, because they really are. The last album wasn't great. The new lead singer has been meh at best. I give them props for trying with, I believe the guy was on one of the singing shows and he just happened to land the gig with Creed because they heard him and it was a great fit. And
you mean Stone Temple Pilots?
Yeah, excuse me, for Stone Temple Pilots. So for all intents and purposes, I think that they're pretty much finished. So I don't think that they were going to come out.
Well, I wouldn't say finished, but they're not the same draw as they used to be.
No, I think that they're finished. I think because they did the thing with Chester, and that ran its course before Chester passed. And I think that it's very hard to replace Scott Weiland. Scott Weiland was a unique, once in a lifetime talent that you're not going to get just out of anybody. And it is what it is. I'm surprised that they didn't try to get Third Eye Blind.
Well, so here's the thing, and this is where I agree with you, where they needed that big name, that big, like, oh, I haven't seen that name. That's a big draw. And I think a big problem with the idea of 90s nostalgia is either the band is still actually around, like they're still actually, they never actually went away and they're still actively touring, or they were never that big to begin with. They couldn't do an amphitheater tour on their own. Like, I think it's just like, I mean, I love Alice in Chains, but like, they've been back now for a while. That, like, Soundgarden, there's no way they're going to come back unless if they do something unique and different under a different name. Like, now that Chris Cornell's passed away, Pearl Jam is still a huge draw. I mean,
I don't think that you're going to get grunge band. I don't think the intent was to get grunge bands for this.
Post grunge.
You're right. So let's start with the post-grunge thing.
So then, but then, like, Foo Fighters are still around. Nickelback is still around.
Too big.
I mean, but you're trying to say, like, what's a band that would have attracted people to this cruise? And I'm just saying, there's really not that many, if
and
any. That's why Creed fits the bill. And I'm agreeing with you on that.
Right, and that's exactly why they got them. Like, if you think of this as a 1-day or a 4-day festival on the water, what bands could you get for a festival? Third Eye Blind is always a huge draw at festivals. So I'm surprised. Yes, I'm surprised they didn't try to get Third Eye Blind. I'm also, I mean, you can't do Stained because they're still big. They just released a new album. They just kind of got back together too. A Breaking Benjamin, I think, is 2 and a 3 Days Grace. They don't fit the bill here. So what was the band that you could have got? And Creed, I think, is the easiest draw. If you follow music at all, you'll know that Alter Bridge is essentially Creed minus Scott Stapp, and they're phenomenal musicians. They're still active, and the only person you really have to bring out of wherever he is Scott Stapp.
And he's the one that's probably been more vocal about wanting to get Creed back together than anyone else.
Right. It's getting him back and to agree to do it, but then convincing Alter Bridge to just take a vacation for all intents and purposes. And Mark Tremonti, if you want, you could do a painting class. How does that sound there, guy? And that's the thing.
I guess that's a part of me why I'm also surprised in that it's not even like, granted, I get why you have to announce this so far in advance, but Alter Bridge is still, not only did they release a phenomenal album last year, but they're still touring they're in the midst of touring behind it right now. So they're not even like off cycle yet. They will be next year, assuming so, especially if it's true that Slash and his solo band are going back on the road, and of course Miles will be a part of that. But like, it feels like the timing does, and to the point that I guess it makes sense to and what you're kind of thinking is that it was the cruise that came first, not the Creed reunion. I actually am more surprised that they're not doing we're doing all the Danny Wimmer festivals next year, and they're testing the waters that way. Yes, I'm sure they're looking at this cruise as a test, but I almost feel like they're already throwing in the towel and admitting, yeah, we get it. We know we're not that relevant. So we're doing a nostalgia cruise.
Or you can think of it this way, that the guys in Alter Bridge aren't going to be doing much. Maybe they need a little bit of a vacation. Hey guys, bring your family on this cruise to Nassau in the Bahamas and have a good time. And you know what? Just bring your gear, and maybe Scott Stapp will happen to be there. Exactly. Make a little bit of money. Exactly. Teach a painting class, Mark Tremonti. I mean,
do you think
you're an artist, right?
So like, it took Alter Bridge a lot of time to convince people to give them a chance. That's how much people disliked Creed. Does this harm the Alter Bridge brand? Does this bring them back a few steps back? And why not?
Because the members can go off and do different things. It does not change the fact that they're phenomenal musicians. And I think that the only real times that you had blowback from them being in Creed was on the first album. And I think by the second album, they've shown their chops enough that, okay, well, these guys are actually legit musicians. I think once the title track from Blackbird got heard by a lot of people, I think that and, Rise Today, those songs kind of led to them. And also Miles being the singer that he is, this whole thing just coming together and showing that, okay, these guys are serious. It was just one person who was the tool for all intents and purposes. And that there was also no drama. That's the other thing, is that there was no drama with Alter Bridge whatsoever.
That we know of.
But that's okay, though, because that's all that we need to hear, is that there's no drama. They went on tour. They did an album. It worked out. It sounded good. It sold well. One of their songs became a wrestler's entrance theme, and they've just consistently been a solid rock band. I would dare even say one of the greater rock bands that's out there right now.
Absolutely.
Not a post grunge band.
Even the one album that we reviewed for our series 2 Minutes to Review, which we both felt like, it's good, but it's, it's missing something. Walk the Sky grew on me over time, but like even that was like still proved that you can be a relatively radio friendly hard rock band and actually be freaking good. Like, in fact, if there's one takeaway from this, people, go listen to Alter Bridge. If you I would assume if you're listening to this, you're already familiar with Alter Bridge, but that is, and I'm bummed I'm not seeing them this summer, but that's a side point. So Matt, to slowly wrap things up, because I don't want to, assume you don't have further thoughts on it, but one last question I want to pose to you. Would you see Creed live if given the chance?
Yes.
Would you pay to see Creed live?
Yes.
Really?
Yes.
Before I start even breaking it down further by price, why?
A, it's a 4-day cruise going to the Bahamas.
No, hold on.
No, you didn't specify.
Okay. I'll specify further once I get it. It's a cruise and it's fun. It's a different environment. So, yes. Okay, you would go on this cruise.
Yes.
Would you, if Creed came on their own, maybe an opener or two, to an amphitheater of your choice, would you pay to see Creed?
How much are tickets?
That's kind of where my next question was going to be. $20 lawn seats with the option to upgrade for $10 or $20.
Yes.
To seats. Really?
Yes.
You'd pay below $80?
Depending on who the openers are, yes.
Why?
It does not take away the fact that the guys in Alter Bridge are phenomenal musicians. It also helps that they were a big part of me growing up. So they were the soundtrack to high school. And it doesn't change what they were. Granted, they're not going to come out with new music that's going to, phase me in the least unless it's amazing. And I would attribute a lot of that to the guys in Alter Bridge. I would say that if tickets were ridiculously priced, no, I would not go. But if it came with one or two good openers or one or two decent openers and them, I would say, sure, why not? For a 90s throwback night, I could do a lot worse than, spending $80 on it.
For a 3-band bill, Creed being the headliner, what would be your dream bill? And what would you say, you know what, for under $80, let's freaking do this. Let me get my leather wristlet. Let me get my white tank top on. Let's do this, bro.
Okay. If we're just throwing any 3 bands from that era together.
With Creed,
I would say Sugar Ray.
Oh, good. Oh. I mean, it matches perfectly, but it still feels slimy. Continue, though.
Probably still have to go with Third Eye Blind.
That is like a nauseatingly sugary concoction of a Slurpee. I mean, that's a hell of a good bill. Honestly, I don't know if I would actually pay money to see Creed. Because here's the thing, and this is my reasoning for it. I love Alter Bridge. And for various reasons, I've still yet to see them live. Even when they were like literally in my backyard, I still didn't go out of my way to see them live. Admittedly, I mean, nowadays I'm much more pickier because I have kids and it's harder to just get away for shows now. In my reasoning, it's like, if I'm not going to go out of my way to see Alter Bridge, a band that I actually really do like, then why the hell would I go out of my way to see a band that I really, even at its height of popularity, I was sick of? The only bill I could see myself going, yeah, I got to see this, is if, and I'm not even saying that this is a good pairing, but like if Creed and Limp Bizkit toured together, I'd consider going just to see if a train wreck, like that would be like for all the wrong reasons. And that, I know, sure, maybe I'm a terrible person for saying this, but I would go just out of hopes that maybe Scott and Fred finally come to blows. just because I'm like just remembering my days of watching TRL when Fred Durst awkwardly just showed up as the MTV News guy was reporting on how Fred Durst dissed Scott Stapp live from stage on the festival bill. Like just for pure nostalgia, be like, yeah, this is hysterical. And even that, it'd be like, no, I gotta get a free ticket for that. I'm not paying more than $25 for that. And that's gotta be a Saturday too. No weekday stuff. That's how much I'm like, and again, maybe I'm gonna get hate for this, but like that's where I'm at with Creed right now.
So one would say that you are not fond of Creed. It's not even the am I missing something about Creed. It is Zach just doesn't like Creed.
It's not that I don't like Creed. I've grown to have a little bit more respect for them as musicians, especially because of Alter Bridge. Mark Tremonti is a phenomenal guitar player. Dare I say, maybe the most underrated guitar player in rock right now. We've talked about this in various episodes for various reasons. I've definitely grown to appreciate how they weren't maybe as bad as they got the flack for when I was a kid, but I'll also admit that my opinion of them poisoned pretty early on at a young age, because it kind of like Limp Bizkit, it became much cooler to hate on Creed faster than it did to like them at the height of their popularity because they were so overplayed.
Let's say there are bands that have been overplayed. Like I can think of many bands that have been overplayed but haven't been hated because they've been overplayed. Maybe you dislike them, but hated, no. Hated comes from a place of what Scott Stapp said versus what he did. That led to them being hated. I don't think the overplaying led to hate.
The music itself, I wouldn't say like I was like, oh, I like this album a lot, and then years later I'm like, ugh. Like I'd say like my dislike for the music came before I appreciated that, you know, maybe they're not as bad. But even now I'm like, this is still not my cup of tea. That's where it comes down to.
And how old were you when Creed came out?
I don't want to reveal. A lady never reveals. I was young. I was impressionable.
You was young. Okay.
I was young. I thought Korn was cool.
Okay. So, all right. I think that the listeners can tell that one of us grew up at the age where, you know, you form a lot of what is going to be nostalgia later in life versus maybe I was a little bit too young to understand fully.
No, that's not fair.
Yeah.
That's not fair.
If you're not going to reveal your age, then I think that's fair.
Listen, no, it's not fair because I would even say as much as I would say I keep going back to Limp Bizkit in this and that. I look at that more nostalgic now and be like, you know what, there was some cool moments there. So much so that it pained me how disappointing Limp Bizkit Still Sucks was. But you can listen to our review of that on your own when you get a chance to, on any platform. It took me a while to also like really give Alter Bridge a try, and I'm glad I did. But yeah, I wouldn't pay to go see Creed, and I'm not even sure I would go for free unless if it was a decent bill or for my schedule in life. That's where I'm at. But do you agree? Are Matt and I way off? Should we be way more excited for the grand return of Creed, the second coming of Creed, or third? I don't really know how. Should we be accepting this with arms wide open?
Under the sunlight.
Is the demand for Creed reunion even higher than we thought? Yeah, I'm using the same two puns. Are we missing something? Or do you agree with us? Let us know on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, and oh yeah, Threads at Epic Footnote. Also subscribe to our YouTube channel to hear a lot more episodes like this, as well as a few Alter Bridge related episodes. And thanks so much to Lucky 13 Beard Co.
Log on to lucky13beardco.com if you've ever wanted to try beard balms and oils before. They will make sure that you feel the best that you can feel and smell the most epic that you can smell, because they have some of the finest quality beard balms and oils on the internet. If you want to give ours a try that we have with them, we welcome that. No pun intended, with arms wide open. It is the Lemmy. It smells of bourbon, tobacco, cola, and leather. It is amazing. Probably one of the best smelling beard oils I've ever smelled. And I'm not just saying it because it's ours, but because they did such a great job on it. If that's not your cup of tea, they've got tons and tons of other scents, and we'll even give you 10% off. So all you have to do, put anything in your cart, use the code EFP10 at checkout. Make sure that you do that because you want to get that 10% off. EFP10. And with one last breath, log on to Lucky13beardco.com.
And, if you want to support us even further so we can keep making podcasts like this, or even just to spread the word to your friends,
go to our link supported us.
Go to our Linktree page. You can find on any of our bios on social media, where you'll find a link to our merch site. Yeah, we sell t-shirts, hats, hoodies, coffee mugs with our cool little logo on it. And you know what? If you're planning on going on the Summer of 99 cruise, let us know, and we'll actually try to get a towel made for the merch tent so that you can buy and proudly use on the cruise ship, so that in between band sets and you go hit the pool, you can have a nice little epic Footnote towel to dry off on. But you gotta let us know if you're going on the cruise and if you want a towel, and we'll make it happen. A little plug and a little incentive. Thanks so much for listening, and we hope you join us for another episode real soon.
I hope there's no rain. That was a song on their last one.
Yeah, no one knows.